All right, good afternoon, everyone who's here virtually and also here in person at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. My name is Damon Whiteside. I'm the CEO of the Academy of Country Music and really excited to have you all here today. We're going to kick off our partnership with the Entrepreneur Center with today's panel. But just really want to welcome all of our ACM members that are in attendance, as well as our board members. I see quite a few of you, as well as ACM staff. But we have a great group today and hoping to give some really good input on just being an entrepreneur or a small business owner or an individual in these COVID times in the music industry, and hopefully give you some great information and takeaways and insights today. But first, I'm going to hand it over to the CEO of the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, Jane Allen, who I'm proud to be a colleague with and have known for a couple of years now. I'm a proud member of the board of the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, and they have a really amazing program called Renew Nashville that we're going to talk about today. So with that, I'll hand it to Jane.
Thank you, and thank you, Damon. I appreciate that. And welcome again. We are so excited to have you all here. I am sorry it's under these circumstances, to be honest, but on the other hand, as I always say, difficult times sometimes leads to the best opportunities for people to do things differently and do things new. And so today, it's twofold. One is the Entrepreneur Center has been fortunate to be able to work with the entrepreneurial community. And we are here for the entrepreneurial community. At the same time, with COVID and the pandemic, we have been given the opportunity to actually put together programs and office hours and access to things that people don't have to pay for. And it's through a program that is called Renew, and you're going to hear from Haley, aka Zap, who is going to talk to you about the program. At the same time, we thought it would be helpful to hear people from the community who have taken this time and or even before this time to be entrepreneurial. And so Taj George is with us and Riley is with us, and both of them. And so and then we also have someone who is going to talk about your career and looking at different things to do with a career. And so we have Brittany Cole, who is going to join us, and she is going to take my seat because I am the most irrelevant person here. And so, but with that, I'm going to ask Taj and Riley and Zap to introduce themselves, and then Brittany, not to put you on the spot immediately, we'll ask you to introduce yourself last. Okay? All right.
Thanks. Okay, I guess I go first, huh? Hi, everyone. My name is Taj George. I am a part of SWV, Sisters with Voices, a multi-platinum Grammy-nominated girl group from the 90s. I'm sorry, let me take this. Can I take this off? Because it keeps sucking in my mouth as I talk. But I've been in this music industry for 28 years now, and I can honestly say it's been a pleasure and a blessing to be a part of this business. This past year has been, how can you describe it? Difficult, life-changing, just crazy all around. But within this year, I've learned a major word, and I use it in caps. Pivot. You have to pivot because literally you have no choice in this year, this shutdown. I was on tour. One day I came back on a flight on the 1st, and I have been home since then. So the first month was fun. It was like, oh, I get to sleep. I was so tired. You're on the road, you're on the plane, you're everywhere. After the second month, I was like, I'll clean everything. I'll just clean up the house from head to toe. The third month, I'm like, okay, now I'll probably get my nails done. I'm like, all right. Now it's time to figure out what we're going to do, the next steps. And that's when my brain started turning. And I figured out ways to not go crazy. Of course, I started a new business. I write more songs. I took the time to develop ideas. And now I'm just supposed to be introducing myself. But okay, I'm going to pass it over. Hi, everyone.
Hey, my name is Riley Vasquez. I have been a tour manager and a front of house engineer here in Nashville for the last 10 years. Recently, I started helping touring crew members just like myself find jobs because it's really, really difficult to find a job in the touring industry. Well, what happens when there are no jobs for anyone? we talked to a lot of crew members, and we realized there's also not many ways that you can advance in your career. So we created a online course helping, front of house engineers, any kind of audio engineer, lighting, stage techs, kind of step up into a tour manager role. And so we've been helping people step up into that role, and they're already finding new opportunities that didn't actually exist before. And so it's super awesome to see that. But that's me, Riley Vasquez. My company's called Tour Collective.
Hello, my name is Haley Zapolsky, but most folks. Does that work now? Awesome. My name is Haley Zapolsky, but most folks around here call me Zap. I've been working at the Entrepreneur Center for about 2 years now. Always my role has been supporting businesses, but in COVID, it really transitioned into running the Renew Nashville, a pandemic response program for small businesses. It's a really exciting program and initiative that we've partnered with Metro City Council, with the mayor's office, really addressing this idea that businesses are suffering in COVID. And we know the music business is suffering. And we know that artists are entrepreneurs, music businesses need support, venues need support. And we're really just trying to come here today to get those resources in front of people.
Good afternoon. I'm Brittany Cole, really excited to be here to share with you today. I am the owner of Career Thrivers, and we are an inclusive leadership development firm. And so I have the pleasure of getting to work with professionals across a myriad of industries, but really around helping you put a strategic plan around your career brand. I know oftentimes we think about personal branding or branding through the lens of business, but I think now more so than ever, we recognize the importance of being able to have a strong personal brand where we're able to leverage those transferable skills to find work in new ways that we hadn't before. So really excited to share with you all today.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all, and we are so excited to have you here. So let me just start with Damon. I don't know, feel like you're in the hot seat, don't you? Okay.
Let's do it.
There seems to be a perception from outside that the entertainment industry has come almost to a halt during COVID-19. Is that true?
Parts of it, and many parts of it have. As Taj was just sharing, it's like overnight, one day the tours just stopped and they have not been able to pick back up again. So, there are certain parts of the business that are still doing well, obviously more on the recorded side of the business. So that fortunately is still driving a lot of, revenue for the music industry. But in terms of the live touring component, it's virtually shut down. People have been out of jobs. Artist management teams have been, finding huge difficulty because so much of the revenue comes in for artists from touring. Mm-hmm. And as you can imagine, these superstar level artists, they've got huge teams that are on their payroll year round, and they can't afford to pay them necessarily when they're not out touring. And this really has no end in sight at this point, though we're hoping, I think the sort of ray of light is that there's at least hopefully some vaccines on the horizon, but still at the earliest, I think the touring industry is really looking at essentially next summer would be sort of in a perfect world scenario of really getting back up and running again, but who knows? So there's a lot of challenges that the industry has been facing, which is, us on the ACM trade organization side of things. We're obviously highly concerned on what can we do? How do we support our members that are out there that are out of work? And if they're, making a majority of their income on touring on that side of the business, and it's musicians and it's bus drivers and it's glam people and it's, production managers, tour managers, all of those kinds of things. So we really want to figure out ways to connect the dots for them on how do they, get through this sort of dark period. And hopefully, touring's going to come back and it's going to be bigger and better than ever, but it's just going to take a little while. So I would say it's definitely not just, it's not made up headlines by any means. And I think a lot of misperception out there is that these big superstar artists aren't hurting. And it's like, true, they're probably not. They probably can survive a year or two, but it's all of their teams beneath them.
Okay, great. And then Taj, you mentioned by month 3, you had to figure out something else to do. Would you mind sharing what that process and or journey and or what you figured out to do.
Sure, thank you. Well, again, like I said, I was on tour. We were literally we had just done Bridgestone. We had done Bridgestone, and then we had another show, came back. We had 2 days off. That 2 days turned into, 9 months now? So yeah, it has been a lengthy process, but during that time, at first I thought, okay, I could use this rest, but then I started thinking, we're sitting here and I don't see an end in sight. There's no progress on the outside. The vaccines are not there. I just started to think, what can I do? I've always written songs. I've always done other creative things, but for some reason, something just compelled me to try something completely different from music. I wanted something that would elevate my mind, allow me to grow in some way. So the craziest thing, the opportunity came to me to start an insurance company. And I'm thinking, I don't know anything about insurance, like health insurance, life insurance. I have one, that's about it. I literally studied for the exam. I am now licensed in health and life insurance. I can do financial planning. These are all things that I had to acquire over the last few months, and it has really been fortifying for me because the business is growing, and I'm just surprised. I would have never thought that in a million years, in January, I would be here as an insurance company. But I love to pivot.
There we go. I love it. Very entrepreneurial.
Yes,
Very
thank you.
entrepreneurial.
Pinnacle Insurance. Thank you.
All right. And then, Riley, let's talk to you because your business was started before COVID. How have you, because your business, it centers around touring and live productions. So how have you pivoted in the absence of shows and live productions?
Yeah, so I started a company a little bit about this time last year, helping touring crew members find jobs. Well, like I said a minute ago, all those jobs pretty much overnight went away. It felt like we were on a snow day and then a snow week and then a snow month. All those jobs went away, and we didn't really know what to do. So as a tour manager and front of house engineer and as an entrepreneur myself, I kind of got with different artists that I work with, and we kind of had brainstorm sessions about, what they can do to make money, but also I'm trying to help other people like me, and I saw all these people struggling, they're not able to pay their rent, their mortgages, they've got families. What do? They typically live tour to tour. They're expecting, a big touring season from, February till May, and that just completely went away. So what do? So one thing that people are starting to do was kind of look to step up their career a little bit and to find new resources of things to do. Like you're saying, you became an insurance person. Well, we got other people out there studying business, studying marketing. And one thing that artists that I've seen do is really start to leverage an email list, which is, marketing people have been teaching this for years. But as artists, a lot of times, they don't really think about those things that they need to do. Well, I've seen artists that have never sold merch online go from 0 to 6 figures just by leveraging an email list. I've also seen artists completely get away from a promoter side of things, sell drive-in shows. They've sold private shows in people's backyards, doing so many shows just through an email list, completely getting rid of promoters. So if you think an artist, instead of going through the promoter, they're going direct to consumer now. And so that's just some different ways that I've been involved in kind of pivoting my services. But as a touring person, it's freaking hard.
Yeah.
And that's the real thing. Yeah, it's a little depressing. The thing that you've built for so long is gone. And so I've just been encouraging all touring crew people, think about your job as more of a business owner now, and start really finding those services that are solving problems and go to those artists that you're working with and figure out how to solve the problems that they're doing. So we're seeing crew people, who have been doing Taylor Swift-sized tours, essentially going out and, helping repair audio gear, something that simple, or, helping clean out lockers that, like sound check, there's a bunch of gear sitting there, helping them prepare so that when the road happens, when shows are happening, the artists are ready to go at that point in time. So different people are pivoting different ways, but you're right. The word this year has been pivot for sure.
No, well, thank you. And of course, I'm sitting here in what you just said. There's so many different avenues as an entrepreneurial brain listening to this. But I appreciate you sharing that. And I do think that's one thing that we as an organization are trying to do is make sure that we're able to connect entrepreneurs and small businesses that have been negatively impacted by COVID and be able to connect them with resources. We don't have the money. We have a company or an organization in town called Pathways that actually does do the lending and is the money arm. But we have other programs and resources, and sometimes, Riley, it's just talking to somebody to break down, what is your skill set? What is your experience? And we're going to get to Brittany in a second, but I'm going to have Zap, if you will, talk a little bit about the different things that are currently going on at the EC, and then other things that may have the people on the call might have an interest in.
Sure, happy to share. First of all, I guess I'll say, unlike the other folks on the panel, I am not an expert in the music business, but we've been seeing these music businesses come through, and when it really dwindles down to it, it seems like all the businesses are going through similar challenges. I think the biggest thing that is helpful is we are trying to connect you with individuals to help you solve those problems. So what might those problems be? One is going to be your finances, your numbers. Can we help you sit down with someone for free to kind of go through your books? What cost-cutting measures do you need to take? What about your HR? What are your options when it comes to your staff, your team, furloughing people, bringing people back on, bringing people part-time? Can we kind of sit you down with someone who can walk you through your options there? What about legal? I'm sure people are probably trying to secure contracts for 2021, and there's probably a lot of COVID clauses that you might need to have in there. Can you talk to a lawyer to discuss that? And then as Riley was mentioning, of course, your sales and marketing for any business is a huge thing. Can we get your branding together? Can we find new ways to market yourself digitally? Another service we're providing through Renew Nashville that is super exciting, we just announced this week, is we just launched our new video studio that we built because people need to get in front of their audience in different ways. We're not meeting in person, so how can we help people record professional level videos to reach their clients, their customers, their audience, whoever, and we can help you work with the producer to record a great quality kind of event or panel or yourself talking like today. I'm trying to think what else I would add. And finally, I think it's tough times. I kind of joke the biggest thing people come into my office for, they kind of just want to talk about what they're going through and how they're suffering. And we're just an ear to listen and ask the question, how can we help?
No, thank you. And one thing is, I thought, is we've had some, like how to transform a website into an e-commerce platform. So a little bit what you said, people that have never sold anything before, but being able to help them realize they do have assets and skills and things that they can monetize, and no one's really ever thought that way before. So with that, let's go to Brittany. And, and I think one thing is, I'm sure you've seen many people struggle. And then over the last few months in particular, how have you seen some people really, because you have two options, you can stay or you can get down. and so how have you seen people stay the course like Taj and Riley and others, but how have you seen them stay and be able to pick themselves up and keep going, and some examples of that?
Sure. Well, I absolutely love the example that Taj shared. And one of the things that I'll add to the conversation right before answering your question, I think that there is a profound perspective shift that we have to make when we are in the midst of adversity. So oftentimes we talk about two words I like to talk about a lot are grief and resilience. Mm-hmm. So one, people are grieving. Mm-hmm. That is a word that we don't like to use in the workspace. I come from a corporate background. We definitely don't talk about grief other than here are the services by which you can go, talk to someone that's licensed. But as your manager, I don't know what to tell you. And so I think from a leadership leadership perspective, there's a profound opportunity to be able to help people that come into your office or that come into your space or get on your Zoom call that want to be able to share where they are because they are grieving. And grieving is not just about the loss of a loved one, but it's the loss of routine. It's the loss of, I used to be able to have, go on tour, now I'm in the house. What does that look like? So I think that's one. Tied to that, too, is this idea then of resilience. So resilience, oftentimes we talk about this idea of being able to bounce back quickly, right? So everyone's looking for the quick fix, right? March happened, it's like, okay, by May, we're going to, and I can remember just talking to friends and colleagues coming from the pharmaceutical background thinking no pharmaceutical has ever been created, tested, FDA approved, and mass distributed in under 12 months. And even if that were to happen, it would be the other word we're hearing this year, besides pivot, unprecedented. So it's like, okay, how do we then ensure that we have a perspective around resilience that helps people to reimagine and reinvent? And so it becomes about focusing on what is in front of you, and that may be something that you've never done before, but you're able to leverage a transferable skill. So I think we have a great example in the room. Another one that I can think about is around the same idea of how do you take your expertise, what you're good at, and be able to leverage it through e-commerce. And so I think social media becomes a great way to do that. I'm really stoked that the EC is gonna have a video studio because video, it's been the thing, but having a place where you can get out your message, become really great. One of the things that I work with a lot of clients on is around storytelling. So it's like, you have your thing, your product or your service that you're reinventing, reimagining, but then what is the story behind it? Like, how do you connect people to that in a way that inspires them to take action? And particularly if you're thinking about, a new venture, obviously, make a transaction to convert. And so I think that that perspective shift is often what's needed so that you can reimagine in a new way something that perhaps you've never done before, but leveraging the same skills that you built before the loss.
No, thank you. And then obviously, or maybe not obviously, but let me make sure, questions from the audience. These are your panelists. I am just here asking questions, but ultimately this is your time and we want you to make the most out of it and get the most out of it. So please send your questions in the text message box on Zoom. And then we have Heather in the room who can then share your questions with the panelists so that they can all answer it. So please, and she can interrupt. So it's not, again, we want to make sure you all get any questions that you have answered. So, all right, with that, I'm going to move on. So Damon, what are some of the initiatives that ACM has started engaging in during COVID to keep the industry moving forward?
Yeah, it's a big question, and there's a lot that needs to be done. But things like this, first of all, is just trying to educate the members on opportunities out there, and thinking like an entrepreneur, and thinking about ways to really, our favorite word, pivot, innovate, all of those things. So that's a really critical piece for us. And to be honest, we're still having countless meetings with our board of directors and having those high-level discussions about what can we do to support our membership, how can we provide them with tools on how they can find new career pathways, even if it's just for a temporary period. Because I think, again, it's not forever necessarily. I imagine it could just be if they need to make a career change for a year, or some of the examples you were giving about just ways to use their skills to do something to just help them kind of get through this hard time until things come back again. But on the ACM side, we've had a lot of change. I don't think there was one thing this year that we have done it that way in the past. Like literally everything changed this year. From top to bottom, and one of those big things was doing a major award show, which we would typically do live in person. It was a big sold out show in Las Vegas, and that's millions of dollars to our bottom line also to have a show like that. But then obviously that all got turned upside down, very similarly to your tour example, Taj. But we were 2 months from our show and ready to go, everything was planned, and then we had to just push the stop button on it and shut it down. But we were able to change dates, move here to Nashville. We did our show at the Ryman, the Opry House, and the Bluebird Cafe. with no audience, but just we're able to still be able to showcase the artists out there and still hopefully help drive engagement for the fans out there with the artists. And so just a lot of examples like that throughout the year. But probably one of the singularly most important things that we're certainly most proud of, and kind of speaking on behalf of our staff and board, is our Lifting Lives, which is our nonprofit arm. And we launched earlier this year a COVID response fund. And this was back in March and April, and essentially very quickly we're able to sort of navigate this, put a plan together, and figure out ways that we could get money to individuals in the industry that were suffering and couldn't pay their bills, couldn't pay their rent. So we, to date, and this was all within just a couple of weeks back in the spring, but distributed over $1.5 million directly to individuals that had applied for funding and were in need. And so we quickly reviewed those applications and then cut checks. All of this happened within, really a week. So that was one way, but it's scratching the surface, because $1.5 million sounds like a lot, but it really doesn't go very far when you're trying to help people pay their bills. So we're been working really hard through the fall, but really fundraising. And we're hopefully going to be very soon announcing that we're going to be reopening that fund soon. Some more news will be coming on that, but we've been working really hard with parts of the industry that are still doing well, kind of like I said, more on the recorded side, the streaming side of the business. And then through ACM funding and Lifting Lives, other fundraising that we've been able to do, we're just trying to generate as much as we possibly can so we can get this fund reopened and start helping people again. So that's certainly a temporary thing, because it's going to hopefully help them for a month or two to get through. We know that we need more longer term effects, and that's where partnerships like with the Entrepreneur Center and other things that we can do to help just get tools out to our membership is really critical to us.
Great. And
So we have a question, and that question is, I'm a manager and I have small and mid-sized artists. How can the Entrepreneur Center's program help my artists?
yes, I am a manager and I have small and mid-sized artists. How can the Entrepreneur Center help my artist?
Awesome. So the first thing I would say is every single artist is going to be an individual and have individual problems. So when you join and sign up for Renew Nashville, we give you a call to figure that out, because we don't want to just put you in a box. But there's a lot of ways. I was just kind of running through a few, but from an artist perspective, artists are entrepreneurs. So it is, I guess, deciding, should they pivot, or can we help them find new revenue streams? So as I was saying earlier, as part of Renew Nashville, you could actually talk with business experts. Can we set them up with a meeting with a general business advisor that can kind of give them some options of how can we differentiate your revenue stream options? Or how can we take your skill set, let's talk to you, let's help you network, get your face in front of some other folks to, like Damon was saying, potentially find other options for your living for the next year until the music industry comes back. Or on the sales, marketing, branding side, we have a ton of experts in that space, because it's kind of what every business cares about, just as it's what every artist cares about, of how can your social media game get better? How could you make your website better? How could you get a website that brings in revenue? Distributing your merch online and getting that out there, having a whole marketing stream, getting set up with the technology to manage your marketing, and not just doing Instagram from your phone, but getting a customer relationship management software, which I'm sure a lot of artists don't have, but they could learn from business people, and establishing that to just really keep the sustainability of what they're doing. Is there anything else you would add to that, Jane? I know I just listed off a bunch of things.
No, I think that's great. The only thing I would think of is we're open. Now you can see we're wearing masks, we have social distance, but we're open. And so some of it is getting around other people, and sometimes just even thinking of yourself as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because so many people don't. But the reality is, it's easy for Zap and I to sit and say, oh, of course artists are entrepreneurs. But many may not think of themselves that way. So sometimes it's even just talking and starting to reframe the thoughts, a little bit what Brittany said, to where, no, you really are. And so I think you're right. And then we also, through our Project Music and Entertainment program, we have really entrepreneurial, tech-run companies that are in our programs and or come through our programs. So it may even just be making connections that might help you. Because again, part of growth is, be the old wise, I'm an old school teacher, but, reading books, networking, talking to people, and just getting a different perspective, and maybe a perspective that you're not used to. And so I think that Zap's correct, and that's the only thing I would add, is just getting around entrepreneurial-minded people who, again, my brain is exploding as people are talking, because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, well, we could do this, and you could do that, now, full of advice. But, it's just at least different thought process to be around and engaged in. And if people don't want to come in here, everything could be done virtual. And most of our office hours are virtual. But again, our place is full of entrepreneurs. And so that are full socially distanced, mask entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to feel like there aren't options, that it is very hopeless right now, and kind of twiddle your thumbs at home. And what we were really trying to do is build community around people who, I just always use the line, like, they get it. Like people walk in here and they're like, oh my God, people here get it. Like, they know I'm struggling, they know I need help, and they, a lot of times, know some options of what I could do. They have ideas of what I can do. And whether that's virtual or in person, but just surrounding yourself with a community who gets it, who can help you get through it, I think is huge during these times. And that's really what we want to be.
And Zap, I would just add to that conversation. I think the benefit of community, too, is that you think about things that you wouldn't have ordinarily thought about. So I know one idea that was going around in my mind is I have seen corporations and nonprofit organizations and communities that have come together to put on events, like bring in DJs and bring in artists as an engagement opportunity. And like, you would have never thought that, like, oh yeah, like during the break, as a way to keep people engaged, because you're on Zoom for 3 hours, you have a break with an artist. So there have just been some really, I think, back to the first story, innovative ways that people have reimagined the work that they do. But I think community helps to facilitate that.
No, absolutely. And then the other thing that made me think, because even in our Project Music Showcase, one of our entrepreneurs is an artist, and we asked her to perform. And so it's like, worst case, you're in front of 200 people you never have met before and that you may have never been in front of. And so, again, just trying to uplift, and I always say as an organization, we hope to be a light in what right now could be somewhat of a difficult, dark time. And so I would just say, go to the website, click on Renew, and sign up. And then, we could get them plugged in. All right, so let me go to Brittany. What challenges does a health and economic crisis, like the one we're experiencing, present to leaders?
Yeah, so I think to the point I was sharing earlier, I think one of the major challenges has been around, this idea of resilience, and how do I, as a leader, kind of going through my own grief journey with what's happening, also inspire and encourage my team. And I think one of the things that's really important is empathy. And empathy is really about being able to decenter yourself. Like, even though you want to acknowledge that, hey, I'm going through a hard time too as the leader, but it's really about how do I show up and be best for my people. Mm-hmm. And so I think that has become a skill, in addition to agility, that is no longer an asset, but it becomes a necessity as a leader when you're going through adversity. And so I would say that those two things are definitely non-negotiables right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that
Please
as well.
do.
I love what you said about leadership. I want to also just give a shout out to my husband. For those that don't know, my husband is Eddie George. He really got me through this time because his experience was just so profound for me during this experience, because his career didn't end the way he wanted it to. He'd been winning awards and games and everything and being cheered on his entire football career until that last year. Excuse me. And in that last year, he was deactivated 9 games in. That's not how he expected his career to end. He thought he'd go out in a blaze of glory and everything would be perfect. He went through his down period, but he picked himself up, and I mean, he literally just transformed his life. I mean, he's been on Broadway, which pisses me off. Because I've been in the music industry for 28 years and have never been even asked to come to Broadway, but he goes to Broadway? I was like, all right, we're going to work on that later. But then when I was going through my situation, like I said, the music industry just stopped. So it feels like my passion has been snatched away from me. And for the first time, I could relate to what he went through. And he was able to pull me through that down period when I started to feel like it just wasn't going to go away. He really was able to pick me up with his resilience. So I completely agree. Leaders, they have their moments, but they have experience that gets you through times when you can't see the doorway.
Now, thank you so much for sharing. And seeing Eddie as Julius Caesar years ago over here near Belmont, I think it transformed my children. They actually like Shakespeare. Go figure. All right, so Riley, I'm going to ask you, what do you see as the future of the music industry?
That's a big question.
I know. Why not ask you? The great Oz,
Yeah, so I think, we're seeing the possibility of artists connecting with their fans directly right now. And we're seeing that mean a lot more right now than it has maybe in the past. A minute ago, I spoke on email lists, and that seems to be something right now that a lot of artists in my network are focusing on. They're focusing on bringing more value to their fans than just releasing a record on Spotify or Apple Music, or just putting music out there. And they're seeing that they can create experiences. If they're a little more creative, they can create new experiences like drive-ins, like backyard shows that are able to sustain them in a way that they hadn't been able to sustain before. So they're kind of playing on the novelty, if you will, of coronavirus. They're taking the situation that we have right now and they're making it work for them. And so, I'm not sure what the future of the music industry looks like. If I could, I would say bet a lot of money on me. But I am seeing a new way of artists relating to their fans, and I think it means a lot more right now. And so,
do you think that we'll go back to tours being the main source of income and drivers for the music industry?
I think we will be going back to touring. It'll come back full. It might take a few years to come back pretty hard. I think touring crew members are going to be looking at their jobs completely different. Before they were just, operating like I run sound, give me a job. They're going to be thinking more about their career path. There's going to be more advancing careers. So they're going to be able to level up more throughout their career than they possibly have. They're going to be thinking a lot more about their future rather than just every next tour. So we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. But yeah, I do believe there will be more touring in the future. Absolutely.
Okay, good. And I will say, Damon, I just want to say thank you. As a fan, watching the awards show, it just felt like a little bit of normalcy. And so as a fan, that was very appreciated. Like, oh my gosh, it's sort of normal. All right. Normal as we know it. All right, so let me ask you, Taj, what do you see as the future of the music industry? And do you think tours will continue to be the main focus for artists?
I do believe touring will be back. I feel like right now we're in this caterpillar stage, and people are finding different ways to recreate, do things. I mean, the virtual concerts are really, really developing. There's this one show on Instagram. It started on Instagram. It's called Versus. Have you ever heard of Versus? And it started off where the artists were literally on Instagram Live. Excuse me, I can't talk with this on my mouth. They were on Instagram Live, and it was okay. They had major artists that would participate in it, but now it has grown to a point where they're in a studio and they have two artists sitting there able to interact with each other in person. I see it continuing to grow, and I believe eventually that's going to transform into touring as well. But I believe this is the caterpillar stage, and when the touring comes back, it's going to be bigger and better. We see things that we can do better now. We see things that we can make more glorious now while you're on stage. It's not just coming out with a band and singing. I really believe that when it comes back, it's going to come back with a bang, and we're going to just be blown away. And I'm so ready.
Yeah,
I'm so ready.
I know. I know. Well, and I will say this morning, Jim McElvey spoke to the entrepreneurial community, to those through Renew, as well as others. And one of the things, he wrote a book called The Innovation Stack. And as an entrepreneur, I absolutely loved it. But one of the things he talked about was what you were doing while you're waiting. And you touched on it a little bit there, Taj, but it's how you sort of work to make sure when you come back or when the time is right, you are bigger and better than ever. And so whether that's as an individual or whether that's as a touring act, I mean, I'm so excited because I do wonder how are things going to be transformed during this period, because let's face it, without periods like this, you just keep doing what you've always done, because it's not broken and we're all doing okay. But for people actually thinking about a career and a career path. So I do see that as a positive during this time. So enough on me, or enough on that. All right, so Damon, what opportunities or shifts do you see in the music world coming out of COVID?
Yeah, great big question. And I agree, I'm very optimistic. I mean, it's going to come back, and it's going to come back bigger and better than ever. But I think the really neat thing about the challenge of this year, I feel like in the face of adversity, especially the music industry has really been very nimble and has been very innovative. And I think we've all been challenged to figure out new ways to survive. And because of that, virtual concerts, I mean, that literally, there was somewhat of a business around that before, but I mean, now that's had to evolve and it's had to explode. I think there's still a lot that needs to go into figuring out how to make that more of a sustainable business, like the virtual shows, but I think it's definitely an opportunity, and there's so many new ways now that artists are engaging with fans. Like, we've all become so much more just used to the virtual events and these kinds of Zoom sessions. And I mean, it's literally changed the need to physically be in places as much anymore. And there's still always going to be, that's still probably going to be paramount, is going to a live show and sitting in the audience and, interacting more live with the artist. But I just think from a digital perspective and the way streaming has boomed during this, I mean, just speaking specifically to country, it's had like its biggest streaming growth year, just because people are now using those platforms even more and consuming music and video, through digital now so much more than they have. So to me, I'm optimistic, feeling like all the revenue streams from before are going to come back bigger and brighter and better than ever. But I also think there's a lot of new revenue streams and a lot of new ways to connect artists with fans and just music with fans in general. And that's what's exciting, I think, about this program too, is, and you said it, Zap, like, artists are entrepreneurs, and I'm sitting here, my wheels are turning and thinking about all these ways that maybe artists could start reaching out more and creating ways to reach the fans and driving new revenue streams. And there's things, virtual meet and greets, and again, like the live concerts, and we've done a lot with sponsors too that have all become virtual, that used to be in-person events and now have become virtual. But sponsors still need to connect their audiences with artists. So think of all the ways you can connect sponsors and brands in the digital space now that's like exploding. So, I mean, it's so endless that I feel really excited about it. It's unfortunate what it's forced us into this, the situation to innovate like that. But I think, over the next couple of years, we'll continue to see things like, even like AR stuff is going to really explode. I think even more so. And just anything that's more of a virtual platform, I think is going to be a big growth opportunity.
No, as you were talking, I was thinking one of the missions here that I have is connecting the business community with the entrepreneurial community. So yes, I'm like, oh gosh, yes, we need artists to apply to Renew and come into our programs. Because again, I'm already, we have holidays and there's different things that can be done. So, all right, let me, a question.
I actually want to steal your microphone and interrupt you for a second.
Okay.
Damon just mentioned VR, AR, those opportunities. This is just a shameless plug. Tomorrow, as part of the Renew program and the new Project Music and Entertainment pivot that we're making, we have a series of panels that will be talking about those innovations that will be supporting digital artistry and entertainment in 2021 and beyond. I have dropped the link to register for that event into the chat. If you would, please, if you're interested, please sign up for that. It will be great. Starts at 10 o'clock Central, runs to noon. 2 great panels. We're doing it in partnership with the A3E group, which typically does the NAMM events, but as you know, they're not in person, so they'll be partnering with us for the next 12 months. Thank you.
There you go, another resource. So thank you. Yes, because again, I think that's what we always have to be looking at is what is innovative and what is forward thinking and letting our community and our businesses be a part of that. So thank you, Heather, for sharing that. And hopefully people can sign up and participate. All right. Brittany, you mentioned the word grieving. There may be some people on the call today who are still in that period. And not that all of us don't go through that period every once in a while ourselves, but what do you say to people who are in the grieving process and whose motivation has diminished to give them that inspiration, as I always said, to put on my big girl pants and keep moving forward?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing that I always try to do is to listen as the one that is supporting someone that may be grieving. And I think that that's important because our natural instincts as human beings, particularly if we are ambitious, high D, if you're familiar with the DISC scale, we like to solve problems. So it's like, you tell me your issue, I've got a solution to your problem, or at least I want to help you find one. And what I find with leaders who are empathetic, with leaders who understand the need, the necessity of empathy, particularly in these times, is to really pause on that natural lean to like, oh, you've said you had this problem, let me tell you how you can solve it, to create space for how that person is feeling, right? And then if you are in the position of the one that's grieving, I think that it's important that you take the time to invest in introspection to acknowledge how you're feeling. And so I like to call it getting real about resilience. So it's REAL, and it is an acronym for how you really move through that space in a way that is intentional, but also courageous, also purposeful, which gives you the opportunity to reinvent in a way that's aligned with what your skill sets are, and also with joy. And so I think it's important that you, one, reflect is the R, so that's an acknowledgement of where you are, how you're feeling, and whatever that means for you, whether you write it down, whether you talk it out, whether you go to therapy, or whether you just sit and think, but creating that space to reflect, then evaluate. And you say, okay, now that I've reflected, I understand where I am, what are the potential adjustments that I need to make as a result of where I am right now. And then the last part of the real, and this is particularly again for the ambitious high D, ambitious people out there, is that you lose the cape. So you recognize that in order to get through where you are, you have to share the load. And so you have to kind of relinquish sometimes this ego that we have to show up and prove that we have it all together, that we have all the answers, particularly as leaders, to say, I don't really know. So I need to tap into community, hence, again, going back to just the amazing program that you all have here with Renew, to really be able to share that load so that you can journey forward together. So that's what I would share.
Great, thank you. And then Riley, how has your entrepreneurial spirit allowed you to have success in the music world?
Yeah, absolutely. As you know, as a business owner, you're kind of anticipating your customers' needs and helping solve a problem. Well, for the last 10 years as a tour manager, I kind of understand my customer, who is my artist. I understand their needs, what they want on the road. And that's kind of helped me be successful as a tour manager. And now I'm turning that focus onto what do the touring crew people need, that community that sometimes is often left behind. What do they need? What do they want? What's going to help them grow? And just kind of thinking about who they are and what they aspire to be. And that's been my entrepreneurial spirit. I love helping solve problems. I love coming up with ideas but really looking at that community and finding out what they really want and need. And like I said a little while ago, we created a curriculum to help those people level up their career during quarantine. We literally made it during quarantine, wrote a 100-page book. But we take them through the life of a tour manager and teach them all the things they need to be able to level up to a better leader on the road.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. And then Taj, can you talk a little bit about entrepreneurship and business acumen that artists and musicians need to succeed?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Like Riley was saying, you have to find a need. What do people need? Is there something that you can provide that is an asset to someone? When I decided to look into insurance, the first thing I noticed is that we're in a pandemic. We're in a pandemic, and there are so many people without insurance. There's so many people setting up, GoFundMes to bury loved ones. So I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, how can I get that word out to them that this is what you could use that could ease that financial burden for you in that time, or if it ever comes in the future. There's elements of insurance that I had no idea about, like index universal life insurance policies, which allow you an investment component as well as a life insurance component. That becomes your private bank. If you need to borrow against your own bank opposed to someone else's bank, it will be there for you, interest-free, tax-free. So these are things that I wanted to get out to people because, again, I had no idea about that stuff. So in that effort of my learning, I wanted to make sure other people learn that and give other folks the opportunity to get out and do the same. That's why within my company, I'm looking for independent contractors that can come together and do the same for themselves and build that reoccurring revenue, so when things like this happen, they don't have to feel like they're by themselves and they don't know how they're going to eat the next day or pay their light bill or rent or anything like that. I thought that was the idea of starting a business. You have to find that need and pursue it. Really go for it. Take it step by step. It's not going to happen overnight, but the resilience will get you there. And it's fulfilling because the first policy I sold, I just felt so good about myself. I'm thinking, this girl right here has something she didn't have before, and now she's more secure. And that made me feel good. So I definitely encourage people to look for that little niche, that need that you can provide, and go for it.
Great, thank you. And then Zap, speaking of that, I know we've talked a lot about Renew, and that's a great front door in, but can you even share a little bit about the EC? So if there are any others that actually are, I'm going to start a business, how we could even help them on that journey should they pivot to that extreme?
Yeah, I want to just bounce off of yours, though. Kind of stealing from a business advisor I was listening to was really just talking to a business that no one was buying the product, you know? And even for artists doing a mindset shift of the artist is the business and, you know, live shows or music is just one of their products. But they could have so many other products, and they could find new product lines, and maybe that's insurance, maybe that's merch, maybe that's something else, but definitely a shift there. Talking about the EC, what can I say? So much, I suppose. I mean, our mission is to make Nashville the best place in the country to start a business, to grow a business, to be in business. And that definitely includes the music business. This is an important part of Nashville's economy, an important part of our culture, and so we're super bought into keeping music business thriving and helping it get to the other side of COVID. But we have a huge community here of entrepreneurs in music and in other sorts of industries who are interested in connecting with you, giving you resources, giving you advice. truly the best asset here. It's not going to be me. It's not going to be these events. It's really going to be, we have 320 business advisors, 320 experts who can talk with you one-on-one and have been there, done that, and give you advice. And it's really my job to just figure out the best one for you to talk to. And that's truly kind of like the lifeline of the EC, is those experts who are dedicating their time, their knowledge to really serve people like you.
Great, thank you. And then we do have programs. So if in fact somebody did start a business, I think Riley, you went through.
Yeah, I came through in-flight. If I hadn't have been here this last year before now, I would be completely buried in a hole outside somewhere. Being in the program here was really, really great for me and helped me really find a great path in my business.
Wow, thank you. Yes.
I would add to that, I'm a pre-flight alum, and I was in the midst of my pivot last year from corporate to running my business full-time, and so I highly recommend the programs here at the EC,
Oh,
for sure.
wonderful. Thank you. I didn't even know. How about that? Okay, and so we're almost to the end of our time. Any other questions, Heather, from the audience? Okay, Damon, do you want to close it out?
Yeah, I would just love to say, thanks to everybody for joining. But when I first learned about the Renew program and talking with Jane, and it was coming off of a lot of discussions with our ACM board about just ways that we can provide resources to the membership and the music industry at large, I thought, God, what a perfect opportunity if our music industry really knew that this resource was here. I know many folks that are familiar with Project Music, but this is such a great way. It's a free program that is funded by the city of Nashville that is reaching out to help our entrepreneurs in this community. And music is a huge part of the Nashville community. I think the recent stat I saw was like $10 billion just from the music side of the business here. So it's a great way. It's awesome that the city is giving back that way, that the Entrepreneur Center is giving back that way. So, sign up. It doesn't cost anything to do it. Just at least jump in, and it'll expand your mind, hopefully, and allow you to network with others and just figure out what kind of resources you may need to make that pivot, and hopefully, be able to, either do something temporary or maybe it becomes a long-term opportunity. So, but just thanks everybody for joining, and Jane and Zap for putting this program on.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here. It's www.ec.co and then Renew. And it'll pop right up on the homepage of the Entrepreneur Center's website. So that's how you sign up. And as my son said, is there a catch? No, there's no catch. So have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.